Well, good morning, everyone. This is John Craig, and you are listening to our Monday edition of Let Us Reason Together. And I appreciate y'all joining us today. This show, of course, is based on Isaiah 118. Come now and let us reason together, says Yahweh. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. This is where we sit down and reason out current events, cultural shifts, and of course, this week's Torah portion. And we can either push back or push through. Nevertheless, if iron does not sharpen iron, sparks will never fly. Sparks are good sometimes, let alone ever get a fire going. That's what we need. We need a fire going. We need a revival in our land. We need an awakening that just sweeps through this nation. We really need it. Absolutely. Without a little heat, a good midrash, how will our hearts ever get soft and moldable enough to be transformed in the way that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, wants us to be, and maybe have a little fun along the way? And that's what we need to have this morning. Is that right? Okay. So today is Monday, May the 13th, 2019. It is the 8th day of the second month of Iyar in the Hebrew year 5779, and it is the 23rd day in the counting of the Omer. So we would love for y'all to participate with us in the chat room. So if you're there, give us a shout out, tell us that you're there. And also, if you like the show, make sure you go in there and give us a thumbs up, share it, put it on your social media, let people know about what's going on here in the Let Us Reason Together, as well as the Lamb Network. So here's some other things regarding what today is. Today is Justifying Your Actions Day. Justifying Your Actions Day. So if you're one that likes to make up excuses, well, get creative, all right? All right. And how about this? Mysterious Looks Day. Mysterious looks. Okay, that was a mysterious look.
That wasn't very mysterious.
That wasn't mysterious. Okay.
That was like freaky.
What was that one show where the lady made these crazy faces and then she made
that
another
looked
face.
like the back end of a cat.
And then she made another mysterious. She put it, and she goes out, and it was
what's the back end of a cat?
That's the same look.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. I don't remember that show.
What was that show?
I
don't know. So okay, all right. How about this one? Make excuses for your screw-ups day.
I think you do that already.
That's kind of like Justifying Your Actions Day. It kind of goes along with the same thing. And then it's Mayday. Mayday, Mayday. How about this? It's Accounting Day. It's Cough Drop Day. It's Frog Jumping Day. Frog jumping. Is that about jumping over frogs? No, maybe not. Hey, I got a story about frog jumping, by the way. I did one of those road trips. You know, when you're in college, you do these road trips. So a friend of mine came down from Kansas, and he and I were on a summer mission project together and had become friends. And he came down from Kansas. We met up together, and then we went out to see my cousin way out on the east side of Tennessee. And so we were driving. You know, Tennessee is like a super long state. Well, then somewhere in the middle of the night, we were in this downpour. And in the midst of the downpour, we just thought there were big drops. They're just splashing on the highway. And of course, the speed limit back then was 55 miles an hour. Remember those days? Yeah, it was a long trip. But you know what was going on? There were frogs, like millions of frogs migrating across Interstate 40 there in Tennessee. Yeah, there's nothing you could do except drive over frogs. They were hopping. Maybe that's why we observe it in May, to commemorate the jumping frogs. I don't know. It was crazy. Tennessee has like millions of frogs. Okay, moving right along.
That's not just Tennessee.
She said not just in Tennessee.
Not just in Tennessee. All right. So
no, I live in swampland.
Oh, see, you got lots of frogs there too. Okay. How about this? International Hummus Day. I think we got some hummus there in the fridge too. Yeah. How about, I like hummus. That's good stuff. And then National Apple Pie. Yeah. And National Apple Pie Day with your hummus. Well, maybe at different times. Not on the pie, but yeah, that would be kind of gross. Okay. How about National Fruit Cocktail Day or National Leprechaun Day, National Women's Checkup Day. It's Top Gun Day, Tulip Day, and World Cocktail Day. So, what
Danger Zone.
are you singing? Top Gun?
Yeah.
All right. There was like at one time that was
That
like
was a good movie.
you liked that show.
So did you.
Yeah. It's a good show to go back and watch every once in a while.
That show was filmed right outside my husband's barracks, right before I met him.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah,
That was before Tom Cruise was all crazy.
yeah, that
Or-
was done the movie was filmed in NAS Miramar, which is now a Marine base in San Diego, California.
Wow.
And the volleyball
Great.
scene was right
Yeah.
there outside my husband's barracks.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he got to sit there. All the military guys got to be part of that movie, and of course, my
And so
husband.
they got to watch these guys. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
and my
that's
husband
really
was way in the back. He goes, "You can't see me in the movie because I'm shy. I don't want to be in the movie." So I just sat back and just
Too bad.
watched. I was like, "You should have been in the movie."
That's right.
Exactly.
That could have been just a breaking
We
moment.
can say, "Hey, Mr. Cameron, hey."
Yeah, he was stationed there, and they did a lot of the filming right there on that base.
That's really cool.
Well, here's some other things that are going on. Well, there's nothing being observed this week. I mean, it went from day to month. So here's just a few more things that are being observed in the month of May. Mental Health Month. Mental Health Month. So I'm just going to make a plug. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the best things for mental health. And as Sandi likes to say, she likes to go in the garden and squeeze dirt. See, that's great for mental health. That connection, there's something about grounding, literally grounding, walking around barefoot in the grass is really good for your mental health.
Then why don't you do it?
Because I don't walk around barefoot,
It's just weird.
but I like the
He's
fun.
mental.
He will not walk around barefoot even in the house. I
Yeah.
never wear shoes, and he has to have shoes on. Go 1 inch, he has to put shoes on.
I cannot stand the feeling of walking on something that is even a little bit of grit. It's like it just drives me nuts.
You and Dave, my husband's the same way. As soon he even goes to bed with socks. It's like, really?
No,
Yeah.
I don't do that.
You used to.
I used to. Well, I would go to bed with socks because you can hang meat in our house, and so I was like,
Hot.
I am so cold.
So hot.
Sandy's got it's like 40 degrees, and
Exaggerated.
Yeah.
So-
when he has no socks on and he walks out, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a miracle.
I never see my husband's feet because he always has socks on. So
Yeah, him
I
and
don't
my
have socks
son
on
Daniel.
today.
you have those ugly slippers on.
These are slippers from my daughter-in-law.
They're beautiful slippers.
There you go. Which one is it?
I don't know. I need to change my size.
All right. Can we give us a different face?
Why are you reverting back to the back end of a cat? Is that what's on your mind?
Nope. There's a whole story behind the back end of a cat thing, but it has to do with having facial hair and other stuff. So
Which looks
we're not going to go there. May not be appropriate for all audiences. Okay, moving right on. National Asthma and Allergy Awareness Month. Yeah. Okay, we're aware. And then a National Barbecue Month. And I like grilling out. I really do.
when you're home.
When I'm home, and I just love having grilled food. It's just the best. Absolutely the best. And barbecue is good, but other different ways. And Sandi just says these great marinades. And what can I say? Just put it on the grill. Put it on the Barbie.
I'd love to put it on the grill, but you have to be home.
Got to be home. Yeah, right now it's busy season. How about National Bike Month?
Ooh, can we go mountain biking?
I would love to go mountain biking. That would be a lot of fun. We got the
I
second
think I
largest
have to recover a little bit more.
second largest canyon in the United States has some of the best biking trails just 20 minutes away from us. So awesome. How about here's the daily quotes for Monday, May the 13th. Positive quote of the day. So this is make us feel positive. This is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Yes. So that's a good quote. You got to have enthusiasm, and then great things can be achieved. How about funny quote of the day? So get ready to laugh. Well, not my favorite person here.
You say that every time.
I know, because
you see his name,
I
but
know,
you use his quotes all
but
the
I use
time.
his quotes because that's what the website I use puts him out there. But anyway, funny quote of the day from Woody Allen. It says, "I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens."
It's not funny.
Can I say wah wah?
I agree, Joe.
Okay,
and plus, I don't like him either.
Yeah, I don't know. People call his movies comedy movies. I've never liked a Woody Allen movie. I like British humor.
I don't get it. He watches this Netflix thing, Sherlock Holmes, that's British, and he's over there laughing, and I'm like, this is so depressing. I don't get anything.
It's hilarious.
It is not. I'm like,
Sherlock Holmes on Netflix. Okay,
the tall guy that was
he was the
bad guy in Star Trek.
Yeah.
The remake of what was the guy? Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, tall British guy.
Yeah. So he's Sherlock Holmes, and then who was
he?
Frodo?
Khan. Yeah, the guy that played Khan.
Yeah.
And then not Frodo, the Bilbo Baggins guy is Holmes.
Is Dr. Watson.
Yeah, Dr. Watson. And I don't get it. John is over there laughing, and I'm like, John, I don't want to watch this. It's depressing.
This is hilarious. It's hilarious.
I don't get it.
I get British humor. I just do. Maybe
it's because you grew up in Europe.
8.5 years.
Or you're a guy.
8.
Or both. I don't know.
8.5 years. I mean, it's not like Monty Python humor. It's different humor. But
you roll on the floor, and I have no idea why you're laughing.
It is just hilarious. Just the Brits are just behind that stiff upper lip. They're funny. They're just funny. Okay, that's all I have to say. And it's clean. So, all right. So, how about the love quote of the day from William Shakespeare? Is that okay? Is this a okay guy to? All right. Love comforteth like sunshine after rain.
It's love comforteth like sunshine after rain. You got to say it if it's a love quote.
It's lovely. It's lovely.
Have inflection.
All right. It's lovely like sunshine after rain.
That's not it.
Okay, verse of the day. This is from Leviticus 23:4 from our Torah portion. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at the times appointed for them. So that is awesome. Just remember, these are meeting times. He has set these days for us. I could probably preach about that or something. I don't know, but sure beats some of the other holidays we got. Okay, what happened on this day in history? How about this? In 1787, Arthur Phillips. Everybody know who Arthur Phillips is?
Tell us.
Well, if you're from Australia, you'd know. He set sail with 11 ships of criminals to Botany Bay, Australia. And this is how Australia was born.
I knew that.
At least from the Western perspective. There were the Aborigines had been there a long time before, so they really didn't see it being born. They just probably saw it as an invasion. But nevertheless, Captain Arthur Phillips commanded a fleet of British ships carrying convicts to New South Wales on this day, effectively founding the British colony of Australia. By the way, you know who these convicts were? We think about they must have been really bad guys. Actually, they were nonviolent criminals. They were being stored on these ships because there was such a huge crime wave that was hitting Britain during this time. It was right after the Revolutionary War.
They were probably people wanting to get food for their families or something.
Yeah, it was in the
they weren't criminals at all.
It was the birthing of the industrial world, and what we had is we had the elite, and they were basically kicking people off of the land, and the people were hungry, and they would steal just so they could feed their families. And then they were, of course, arrested, and they were thrown in prison, and it just horrible conditions. So they took these boatloads of people and sent them to Australia.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to hunt either.
Yeah, weren't allowed to hunt. They couldn't do anything. I mean, what were they to do? I mean, to go around and eat grass? I mean, there was nothing for them that they could really, really do during this time period. So they went to Australia. And in fact, it said that there were like 3 births that took place on those ships. On the way, it was a 9-month journey to go from Britain to Australia. So how about this? 1934, Great Dust Bowl storm sweeps across U.S. prairies. Yep, this was the kind of the birthing of the Dust Bowl area just back in 1934. Officially started on this day. How about this? 1940, Winston Churchill. Remember that guy? He said this: "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat," in his first speech as Prime Minister to the British House of Commons. Of course, he was the one that led Britain through World War II. And then in 1981, Pope John Paul II. This was an infamous day for the Pope because he was shot and critically wounded by the Turkish gunman Mehmet Ali Agha, or Akka, in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. What's that hum about?
Well, just the Pope just met with the highest ranking Muslim and declared one world religion.
Yeah.
I got that article.
Yeah. The Muslims were trying to kill him just, 40 years ago? 30 years ago?
Yeah, but was he really a Muslim, or was he just a Jesuit that was portraying a Muslim?
Oh, now we're
conspiracy
getting into
person in me.
Oh, man. Now we're opening up a can of worms there. Very interesting. Okay, but many people have died around the Pope, by the way, just saying. And why? Because there's a lot of dark control, shall we say. Oh, let's move on. Okay, 1989. 1989, on this day in history, approximately, remember this, 2,000 students began a hunger strike in Tiananmen Square, China. Why were they protesting, and what were they protesting about? Well, they were protesting communist Chinese authoritarian rule, and they wanted freedom. And ultimately what happened, they got mowed down by tanks there in China. And if they weren't mowed down by the tanks or run over by the tanks, they were thrown in prison, many of them. So what a time in history. How about this? Famous birthdays. How about, you remember this guy? Jim Jones. It's his birthday today. Full name is James Warren Jones, founder of the People's Temple cult. And from what I remember, I think he came out of the Southern Baptist Convention or something like that. And he was a religious leader, community organizer, and leader of the People's Temple, best known for the mass suicide of 909 of its members in Jonestown, Guyana. And then 5 individuals were murdered at the nearby airstrip, including Congressman Leo Ryan.
I remember literally hearing, I was in junior high, it's like 7th grade, and I remember hearing about that because I was in the library.
That's where we got the phrase, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." And in fact, and this is what led up to this, I learned this the other day, is that they just didn't have one event. I always thought it was one event because I never read the story or anything about it, just heard the news reports about everybody just came and drank the Kool-Aid and they died. Well,
the news doesn't tell the truth.
Yeah, the news doesn't tell the truth. What happened is this was a daily thing. They'd all gather, they would drink Kool-Aid. And the day that they gathered to drink Kool-Aid this time, it had poison in it.
So did they know? That's the true question.
They didn't know. They didn't know. And so, and it was at that point in time, Leo Ryan, the congressman, he was investigating what this cult was doing down there, so he could report back.
So in reality, he put it out there as just something they do every day together. In reality, it was for a future it was a practice for a future exercise to wipe everybody out.
Yeah, and the thing is a lot of people blamed Jim Jones for killing everybody off, but the fact is that they think there's a more sinister thing that took place to just destroy the cult, and that somebody
So it wasn't him, it was somebody else?
Poisoned him.
Wow, now I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so
Wow.
they've called it a big mass suicide, but in fact,
it probably was a murder.
It was a mass murder. So
wow,
there's more to the story.
I wouldn't be surprised.
More to the story about that one. How about this? Stevie Wonder. So musician, songwriter, and so it's his birthday today. And it says here that in 1972 he was in a car accident which left him in a coma for 4 days, and it tells about some other things. I thought it might be related to his eyesight, but nevertheless, it's his birthday today. He's 69 years old. And then here's another gentleman that is in the news for a birthday, and not a lot of people like this guy. A lot of people might really like the guy. I don't know, but he's been a newsmaker in the past. His name is Dennis Rodman. Back in the day, basketball player. Everybody thought he was just kind of he was actually very good. He was the NBA Defensive Player of the Year twice, and he played on the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. And he was known for his controversial antics, his dyed hair, and his piercings and tattoos. So he's 57 years old today. And he's also been known because he befriended North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Or Yoon, whatever his name is over there. And he was actually he's gone over there several different times. In fact, during the Trump administration, he went over there because he actually, in spite of all of his antics, has opened a door that helped communication between our nation and North Korea. So, take it what it is. There you go. How about some wit for the day? You ready for some funny eating habits? Funny people that have funny eating habits.
Is it from the Craigs?
It's not from the Craigs. My wife thinks that the Craigs don't. I'll leave that comment for another time.
Not the Craigs.
All right. So
from John Craig.
All right. So here we go. Here is it says, a meal in Istanbul could include, you ready for it? Lamb eyeballs, dressed in a traditional Turkish cream sauce. Lamb eyeballs. How'd you like to have some lamb eyeballs? Rolling around on the plate there? Yeah, you roll it around and then they turn upwards and they look at you.
Oh, John.
Okay, how about in Central and South America? Here's another tasty non-kosher meal. Iguana meat is sauteed and turned into a gastronomic casserole that is eaten with bread or rice. And then here's something else. This is also a non-kosher meal. Australian Aboriginals commonly eat chopped, marinated kangaroo tails and sugar ants. Yep. Not on my menu. How about this? Pickled ram's testicles and decomposed shark meat are among the traditional Icelandic foods that present special challenges for tourists. Shall we say also not clean?
You're giving me bad memories.
What are your memories from, Joe?
Well, my family, is from Spain, and my grandparents my grandmother made fish eyeball soup when I was a little girl, and yeah, that was disgusting. My brother thought it was neat and ate it and said, "Oh," and he said some things that I was like, "You have my soup."
Swallow. Did you chomp or just swallow those?
Sounds chewy.
I did not eat it.
The little things looking
my
up.
brother did, and he would chomp on them, and and he would say some things about it, and
It probably squished, huh?
And then I've been blindfolded and had snails as a young teenager. Yeah, this before I knew things were not kosher. and did not know I was eating snail. I thought, oh, this is kind of rubbery. What is this? Is it a fish? Is it this? And they unblindfolded me and showed me that it was snail. And of course, I ran out the tent and got sick. So yeah.
Wow.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Glad to remind you of those special events of our lives, of your life there. Okay. Yeah, of course, here in the Panhandle of Texas, big thing are those little
calf fries.
Calf fries. Taste like chicken.
What people may not know what that is.
Calf fries. They are they're testicles of baby.
Not baby.
Male cows.
They're not baby. Baby cow. They're not baby.
Castrated cows. Castrated, not cows. Well, bulls. Bulls. There you go. All right. I should know that. We live in Texas Panhandle.
Have you had them before?
I did. Remember, we went to not the Big Texan, but we went to the Red Barn, and there was a whole group of us.
I didn't eat one.
And someone ordered it, so I tried it. I did. Tastes like chicken. Yeah. Thank you. Sasha. She didn't like it either. Like, yeah. Okay. How about this? In parts of Asia and Africa, locusts are typically dredged in wild honey to give them extra flavor.
Well, we can't eat that. That's legal.
Yep. That is completely clean. You can do that. And then how about this? And people still reportedly breed dogs for food through severely impoverished areas of Korea and China.
And
North America. Yeah, what was that?
And the Philippines.
In the Philippines. Yeah. I always used to joke with Sandy about would you like some Pomeranian?
There's a lot of hand holding your arm today.
I know. Man,
my husband went to the Philippines. He was in the Navy, and he says he goes, you don't know what you're eating when you go to those streetcars. You could be eating monkey or you could be eating dog. And they sit there and they tell you, oh yeah, beef, very good, very good.
No, bow wow. Bow wow.
And then you see a dog walking by with 3 legs, like, yeah.
Yeah. I just contributed to the cause. Well, North American and UK animal rights groups are working to ban the practice. So just so you know, then things are going on that way. How about this? Bear paws and fillets remain a highly prized dinner in Russia and Eastern Europe.
Tell us something in Russian.
Я говорю не по-русски. Okay? I just said I don't speak Russian.
That's not true. Just FYI, that's not true.
We're gonna move on from that. And then how about this? Fresh snake meat is readily available in Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Phoenix, Arizona.
In Texas, they eat a lot of rattlesnake. Just
run down to your little taco stand and in Phoenix and can have some rattlesnake. Actually, we are in the season. I think it's like really soon, right?
But they'll go kill hundreds, thousands of rattlesnakes.
Yeah, down in Sweetwater, it's the Great Rattlesnake Roundup. And they'll collect during the roundup 6 tons of rattlesnakes. 6 tons, and then they barrel those things up. They put live, and they'll ship a lot of it out to New York City.
New York City?
Yeah, get a rope.
Oh, them there snakes are really fresh.
They are fresh. Woo, man! I can't stand snakes. It may give me the EBGBs.
That's not so bad.
EBGBs.
I don't want to eat them though.
But yeah, you
snakes don't bother me.
You and spiders, me and snakes. That's it.
No spiders.
How about this last one? Chinese delicacies include shark fin soup and pigeon soup, while we here in the West have a fondness for goose liver pate and frog legs. Well, sorry, those aren't clean. Now, the pigeon would be okay, but not the frog legs. So, we already told my frog story. That's all I have to say about that. There you go.
Well, it's late.
All right. So, hey, let's move on to our next segment then. Are y'all ready for the Torah portion? I've got a little bit going here for the Torah portion. It's based on this week, and it's called Emor, which means to say. And several times during this Torah portion, it says, say to the people or say to the priest. So going right along here, the Torah portion is Leviticus 21:1 through 24:23. And so I gleaned something that you all might be able to use later this week in your Torah portions. And this is about God's plan, Elohim's plan for the appointed feast of the Messiah. So here in Leviticus 23, it says, Yahweh said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed feasts. That's from Leviticus 23:1 and 2. So here we have this concept of the feast days being called the paths of righteousness. And so they hold an eternal prophetic nature that teaches the way for believers. So God's path or God's people walk in these paths, not for salvation purposes, but in the pursuit of holiness to glorify Yeshua's kingdom on earth. Hebrews 12:1 through 2 says, therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Yeshua, the author and finisher of faith. So we get the concept of a race is run on a path there out of Hebrews. So the paths of righteousness are the covenants, the feast days and the Moedim, the Sabbaths, and the new moon festivals. So I thought that was very, very interesting to see the concept of the paths of righteousness. Here's some places that we hear about it. But going on, it says, these ordinances are all designed to work in unison for the bride, the priesthood of the Messiah. They act as a highway of holiness for the ingathering of God's or Elohim's redeemed people in the latter days and the age of Messiah. And we can see that in Isaiah 35:8 through 10, James 1:12, and 1 Peter 5:4. Here's what Psalms 23:3 says. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So his paths of righteousness, it's about the Moedim. It's about the Shabbats, the Shabbats, the Sabbaths, all of the Sabbath days that are out there. How about Proverbs 8:20? I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice. And then on Proverbs 2:20, so you may walk in the way of goodness and keep to the paths of righteousness. So the paths of righteousness are really, and I really like this concept here, because when we think about the paths of righteousness, we think about going back to the Torah and studying out the Torah portions and learning these things. And in Acts 16, where in the council at Jerusalem, it says, tell the people to abstain from sexual immorality, eating meat with blood in it, meat that's been strangled, and that type of stuff. So, and then it says, for Moses is preached every week, or on the Shabbat. Still having a problem getting that word out. On the Shabbat in the synagogues. So in other words, saying, don't give them everything. Just if they'll go to the synagogue, they're going to hear Moses. And what is Moses? It's talking about the Torah portion every single week. And so they're going to learn these paths. But what's it about? It's about the cycle of things. And what is it? What are these themes whenever we have the feast days? So we've had Pesach and unleavened bread and the Feast of First Fruits. We're right now in the counting of the Omer, and we're leading up to Shavuot. And when we have Shavuot, then we're followed by the Feast of Trumpets. We have Yom Kippur, and then we'll have Sukkot. But what are the themes that always revolve around these feast days? If you think about it, it's about getting our hearts ready, getting our hearts prepared. And how do we get our hearts prepared? we learn to see what the heart of the Father is. And right here in Leviticus, when we're looking at and we're breaking it down, these things are demonstrating to us what it is for us to draw near to the heart of Yah. It's not that we bring him down, we elevate ourselves to him. And these paths of righteousness, by the cycles of the Shabbats, the cycles of the feast days, these are appointed times. These are days that he set aside for us to meet with him. And now in these, and so they call these the paths of righteousness. And the thing is, the cycles are there because we forget things. We need to be reminded, and we need our hearts to continually be made tender before him. And this is part of his plan, so that we can be a people, a bride that's without spot or blemish, ready to meet with him. So that's what I wanted to bring out from this week's Torah portion. Wanted to turn it over to you guys. Hey, Joe, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I like the fact that you said cycle, that everything's repeated and repeated and repeated. And we need that because we keep repeating and repeating the wrong things, like a child that's learning, like a toddler, like your granddaughter's age. You're teaching her, no, don't touch that. She goes and touches it. No, 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 don't touch that. That's ucky. And you got to repeat that and repeat that. And we are the same way. This is why I think the Father calls us children, first of all. And it's also an obedience situation. We need to learn to obey. We have a tendency not to obey. We have a tendency to be, as I call myself, me personally, I call myself sometimes a spoiled brat that wants to do it my way. I want to do it what I want to do, not what the Father says. And in fact, this week I had been reading in 1 Samuel where Saul gets anointed as king, and then Samuel comes and says, okay, this is what Yahweh says to do, and he is disobedient because he does it his way. And in 1 Samuel 15 verse 22, Samuel said, does Adonai take as much pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying what Adonai says? Surely obeying is better than sacrifice, and heeding order than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of sorcery, and stubbornness like the crime of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Adonai, he too has rejected you as king. And he's talking to Saul in this. But this is also for us, because when we disobey, and a lot of people today do that, they disobey God, the feasts and following the law. And it says in his words that if you follow what I say and you obey, I will bless you. This is why so many are missing out on blessings, because they are not following, they're not obeying, they're not seeking, and they're not doing what is told to be done.
All right. Yeah. So I have a question. Do you think that by those that say, well, it's just a type and shadow, so it gives us an idea of who Yeshua is, but they don't practice these set apart days and these events, is this actually blasphemy? Because in this Torah portion, it actually talks about blasphemy. Are we actually blaspheming the name of Yahweh when we choose not to keep his feast days? It's not Jewish feast days. Of course, we all know about that.
If the way I see it is, if a person doesn't understand it and doesn't know it, then they're just sinning. They're being disobedient. But if you know and you've studied this and you know it, you're being blasphemous.
So there is a relationship there, and that, I think that's really key, because it's one of those things about, we have an offering, a sacrifice that's done for unintentional sin. So if we don't get the concept, we're not clued into it. We haven't been enlightened to what it really means to observe these things perpetually throughout our generations. Then it's not there yet, but as soon as we're accountable to it.
Exactly, because you're talking about blasphemous and not knowing. When I was growing up, I didn't know better. We didn't know better. we were learning as we grow up that these are the things you do, these are the things you don't do. And I'm talking in the physical aspect, but it's also a spiritual thing because we're growing. Some of us have come out of the Catholic Church, some of us have come out of the Protestant Church, and we didn't know better, but we started off like a babe. A baby does not know better. A baby grows and it comes out of the milk situation, then it starts to learn to eat solid food and it learns to walk. And when it gets to that point, do you think that a young child's not going to spit the food out because they want that nourishment? And this is what we do, is when we learn his word and we see the truth, you go, and to me, blasphemy is like spitting food that is given to you to be fed to you in the face of the person that's providing the food.
All right. Yeah. Very good. James Myers from South Carolina. It's good to have you here today, James.
Shalom. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you are here today. What are your thoughts about these things?
Well, I was going over this a couple days ago, and I was going over it last night. And the feast days, basically, one of the big misconceptions is that they are the Jewish feast days. But when we read this, it says, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, the appointed seasons of Yahweh, which you proclaim holy convocations, are these. They are my appointed feasts or appointed seasons. They're Yahweh's seasons. The reason that during Yeshua's time that John called the Passover the Jewish feast, because they were the only ones keeping the feast days at that time. They were the only ones who were trying to keep them, at least. Maybe some of it was back where they weren't keeping correctly, but for the most part, they were trying to keep the feast days. They were the last tribe left. The rest of them have been dispersed throughout the nations and had lost their heritage and had lost the Samaritans. We know that the Samaritan woman in John 4 speaks of, she says, what, are you greater than our forefather, Jacob? And she's speaking of the well that they're at, who built this well, and she calls him her forefather. How is that? Because Jacob, the Samaritans were part of those, in my opinion, those lost tribes, the ones who have been scattered. Yahweh is holy, but holiness is also imputed to persons, places, objects, and special times. The word for appointed seasons is moedim or moed, comes from the root word, which means to betroth. Today, these moeds or moedim are memorials of past acts of Elohim and are also prophetic of our future. And it's basically, in my opinion, it's heartbreaking because we have basically done exactly what he told us not to. And we have set up our own holidays, our own traditions, and have accepted the traditions of men over the traditions of Yahweh. It breaks my heart because these are wedding rehearsals for the bride. They're a way for us to actually get back to where we're unified in Messiah. The biggest problem I see with the church today, or the assembly, is that we're not unified. But if we were all keeping these feast days, we would start to become unified. We might be arguing over the calendar, which day is which, but we would be a lot more unified than what we are now. And the one other thing I wanted to touch on was the Sabbath day. In Vayikra 23:3, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. The Sabbath, or you shall do no work on it. It is a Sabbath in all your dwellings. It doesn't say it's a Sabbath to the Jews. It says in all your dwellings. The Sabbath day is we're called to keep it holy in Exodus 28. Also in Exodus 31:14, it's the only day that he set aside that somebody could be killed for, put to death. And the reason is, in my opinion, is because it was a sign. It was a sign of the covenant between us and him, our creator. And if we have this sign and we keep the feast days, the rest of it is when we enter into the Sabbath, we enter into that covenant. It's like wearing a wedding ring, in my opinion. And lastly, John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. I think it's 1 John 5:4 says that we know that we love God if we keep his commandments. We know that we love the children of God if we keep his commandments and they're not burdensome. Those are the two greatest commandments, loving the children of God and loving Yahweh with all our heart, mind, and soul. To keep his commandments means keeping the Sabbath, keeping the feast days, and keeping everything that he commanded us to keep. Lastly, I said lastly a minute ago, but I never knew this, but the Sabbath, or I never noticed this. In Genesis 2:2, the Sabbath day was created without evening and without morning. Every other day had an evening and a morning. It is a picture of the timelessness of Yahweh. When we keep the Sabbath, we are able to participate in his timelessness with him. On the seventh day, it is said, Elohim created rest. Therefore, peace, harmony, tranquility, and rest are part of his attributes. But that's the one day that he basically set aside and he called it holy. And it's the one day that we are to basically pull away from the world and spend with him and spend it. And Yeshua said, come to me, all you labor and who are heavy laden, I will give you rest. It was all to point to our Messiah. Even the feast days, they're all prophetic of him.
All right. All right. Very good. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. Really good. Sandy, do you want to give us some words?
Well, it's just to wrap it up, James hit on it just for a moment. But when you think of the path of righteousness, and we have it lined out that the path of righteousness consists of the Moed, starting with Shabbat onto the other feast days. But we also think about a calendar. What in your home, what unifies you as a family? What unifies you as a community? It's your calendar. You mark things on your calendar, activities that you desire to do, that you want to do. It's what connects you as a family. And this is what connects us. And it, just as James says, it unifies us and it keeps us as one. But we have to choose to do it, because even on the calendar that you may have in your home, you write things down and then you have to make plans and purposes so that you can keep those activities that you have. And it's the same with us. The paths of righteousness, the calendar, keep us as one echad, and they keep us moving forward. But we have to actively choose to participate. And that's the big deal. We can always have excuses: too much money, too much this, too much that. I don't have time. Excuses are as good. I mean, they're cheap, they're worthless. You need any excuse to do if you're looking for an excuse, but it's simply that. These are the paths of righteousness, and they keep us together. They keep us as one. Imagine a family without a calendar, that everybody was doing their own thing. You would be so disjointed and disunified. You would never be on the same page. This is how we remain on the same page.
All right. Hey, very good. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, James, for that part. Let's move on to our next segment here. And this is an article regarding a current event. And it's from an article from bigleaguepolitics.com. All you Canadians, you need to be aware of this, but what's going on in Canada, if it's also actually, they're trying to make a bill here in the United States. If you're listening to Four Corners News, Mark actually separated this segment out and put it on the Lamb Network as well, about House Bill 5. But this is about, which is the Equality Act, which it's a misnomer. It's a misleading thing. Here's what Canada is doing. Canada moves to ban Christians from demonstrating in public under new anti-hate proposal. So what it talks about here is that this bill prohibiting hate-promoting demonstrations at Queen's Park Act 2019 ban any demonstration, rally, or other activity that is deemed hateful by the speaker from being permissible on legislative grounds. So the speaker, we're talking about the speaker of their parliament. So if he deems it hateful, then it's prohibited, not permissible on legislative grounds, effectively insulating the government from Christian speech. It goes on to explain that the nebulous nature of Canada's anti-hate laws essentially give leftist legislatures carte blanche to ban all Christian protests. So let's boil it down. The problem with this bill, however, lies in the fact that the definition of hate is uncertain under Canadian law. As a result, unfortunately, the use of the word hate can be a useful tool for some to prevent differing views from being expressed. That's right. So if you have a different opinion, how do you, just because you have a different opinion doesn't mean that you're hateful, but it depends on what the hearer thinks you're saying is really what it's boiling down to. That is the word hate.
Which is so subjective.
Yeah, it's so subjective. That is, the word hate can be used to silence opposing views expressed when in fact the views are simply a reasonable expression of belief. And the concern is based on actual experience. Canadians have already experienced the contempt shown by the Supreme Court of Canada towards Section 2 of the Charter of Rights, which I guess is similar to the Bill of Rights, which provides for freedom of opinion, expression, and religion. In the Trinity Western Christian University case in 2018, a private Christian university's moral covenant was deemed hateful and discriminating. And then in the Bill Watcott case in 2013, the Supreme Court of Canada concluded that the effects of an expression used, not the communicator's intent, are what is relevant. Let me say that again. It is the effects of an expression used, not the communicator's intent, are what is relevant. The court went on to conclude that the truthful statements and sincerely held beliefs do not affect the finding of hate. Mr. Watcott merely expressed in his pamphlet the well-established facts about homosexuality, which this court held to be hateful. So, as Canada becomes more restrictive towards Christianity, they open their arms for the LGBT agenda and Islam to take foothold in their culture. And it wraps up the article saying, as globalism and liberalism takes a stronger hold in Canada, the government can be expected to become even more hostile to Christianity, and shall I say any Bible believer, and more hospitable to subversive agendas. Why? Because hate is subjective. And one of the things was, there was an interview that I saw on Kent State University there in Ohio, where a young lady was interviewing students and was talking about President Trump and talking about his policies, and with that they were talking about, well, that is hate speech. Hate speech, because it's subjective. It shouldn't be said. That they're actually talking about, that's what it was. They were talking about censorship and why certain people should be censored over others. And just because if it's a different point of view, they think that if it's a different point of view than the mainstream narrative, that it should be censored. That's what they're coming out of, what they're talking about from people on college campuses. So here we go. So here's some thoughts. And James, what are your thoughts about what's going on in Canada and this whole thing about subjective hate?
Well, we see it going on around the world. We see also, I think California is attacking Christianity. They're attacking, the beliefs that we have. It's when you look at the world, I guess when we're looking at the world is becoming more and more as Yeshua claimed it would be. They would, the world, basically what they consider holy and what Yahweh considers holy are not the same thing. And I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but there's a communist manifesto that was written, and it was like an interrogation of this big wig during Hitler's time. And he basically was saying that the one thing that they had to do was they had to get rid of the Christians in order for their plan to be fulfilled. And why is that? Because, Yeshua and his people are the only one that stand in between when it comes to what is holy and what is not. Who else is going to tell the people, that they're doing wrong, unless it be the Christians or the Messianics or those who believe in Yeshua and are obeying his word. Even the church today has gotten very far away from his ordinances and his commandments, and they have become basically the commanders of their own heart, because they basically say, well, we've got to obey these two commandments, and they make up whatever commandments they want those two to be. And then when they wanted to go against homosexuality, they had no problem using the Old Testament for that. But when it comes to the other ones, the Sabbath and those things, then it was done away with. The world is going to look more and more like the world, but we need to look more and more like Yeshua and be set apart. And, we're called to be holy.
Yeah. There's really is a differentiation that's taking place right now. The line isn't as gray as it used to be. It's becoming more and more black and white. It's a complete separation of, this is the biblical way, the biblical path, and this is not. And it's becoming very, very distinct and not so convoluted as perhaps in the past, where there was kind of a blending of other things together. So, Joe, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, this world has tainted the word love. The word love has been tainted, even in the church, because we have where, they say, oh, you're to love, 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 love. Yes, we're to love, but also they forget that Yahweh is a God of discipline, and he is a God of boundaries. And in this world today, the boundaries have been pretty much just decimated. You could do whatever you want. You can be a purple penguin if you want. And if you go to a child and say, no, you're not a purple penguin, you just did a hate crime. So in the eyes of people. And, you look at Hitler's time. Hitler sat there and he posted things. He posted lies here and there and everywhere about our brother Judah, okay, during the time in Germany. And people believed it. They believed what was written in the paper. Back then they had the radio and the paper. Today we have the radio, we don't have newspapers as prominently as we used to, but we have it on the internet, and we have the media, and they're filling you every day, bombarding us with lies. And there's a saying, you give lies often enough, it becomes truth. And this is what's happening. So many people, they think that you're to be loving and kind. Yes, we're to be loving and kind, but we are to also stand firm on what we believe in. For example, we have in the family, we have a family member that's a lesbian. She knows my feelings about her lifestyle. And at first she says, you're not loving and kind, and Jesus was loving and he loves me. And I looked at her, I said, yes, Jesus loves you, but he does not love your lifestyle. That's not being hateful. That is showing you God's rules and regulations for your health, and because he loves you. And these are his rules, and you're breaking his rules. And so many people today, they sit there when we say something, they go, oh, well, even a Christian, if you say something to a Christian that's not following Torah, well, you're not being very loving and kind, and that was done away with. No, God said it, that settles it. I mean, even Christians say that. God says it, that settles it. And if Yeshua is the Messiah, he can't contradict his Father. Because if he contradicted his Father, then what he's saying now can be contradicted today. And that's the mindset we have right now in this world and in the church.
Yes, that even, if you think about it, they would consider that, oh, you're being judgmental. So being judgmental would be hateful based on their definitions that they're using today. And ultimately what they do, they want to silence. They want to silence. What's happened to Paul Joseph Watson, Alex Jones, there are some others. They've been completely silenced, completely taken off of all social media.
Facebook.
Because they're considered to be hateful in their speech. But the problem is, if you look at the whole issue, if they have made up these characters in the mainstream media and say, these horrible people, this is who they are, these are the laws that they're making, these are what they're saying, and so everybody believes that that's the type of people they are. And so people, when they go and when you actually look at the real person, they're not like that at all. But it's what they believe. It's this whole persona that's been made up has become the persona. So therefore, it's okay and legitimate to silence people, silence their voice.
Well, my mom always said to people that do that, she says, this is a little saying, says, you become what you hate. That is what has happened today, is they've become what they hate. They say that they hate that you are being mean and this and that, but they have become what they hate.
Yeah. People get so triggered nowadays. I saw one interview where all this guy was doing was asking this lady what she was doing, and she was sitting on a street corner in Austin, Texas, and she was yelling out for people to support her cause, and the cause was to go down and support the children that are being held at the border. And this whole lie that's being made up in the mainstream media, that they've been separated from their parents and all this sort of stuff. Trump actually changed that policy. So the guy was interviewing her and asking her some question, and all of a sudden, because he brought up the name President Trump, the whole derangement system, here she's talking about being a good Christian and the fruit of the Spirit and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, okay, I'm going to listen here. And the next thing you know, Trump was brought up, and she was triggered. And what was brought up is, well, this is what Trump has done and how he's changed these things, and where you get your information. And she said from Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and he said, well, this is what Trump's policies are, and all of a sudden she's like, boom. And this whole demonic character full of expletives and cursing and just began to spew from her mouth. And it was so vile. And she continued on for about 10 minutes and before the video ran out. And I was like, oh my goodness, where is rationality? And if you're talking about this guy just brought something up, she's calling him hateful because and yet here the whole vileness of the hate was coming forward. The very thing that she was projecting is who she was. But that's common. That's really common. That's what's happening. It's what's been called Trump derangement syndrome, and it is a complete demonic manifestation. Never ever seen it before in the political discourse of this nation.
Lack of self-control.
Yeah, crazy. Talk about lack of fruit of the Spirit there. But not judging, just saying. We know them by their fruit. Hey, let's move on to the half Torah portion. And James, you've got that for us today.
Today, the half Torah portion is Ezekiel 44:15 through 31. I'm going to read just a portion of it, but it says, "But I will make them keepers of the charge of the house, for all the service thereof, and all that shall be done therein. But the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, that keep the charge of my sanctuary, when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near to me and be ministers unto me, and they shall stand before me to offer unto me the fat of the blood, saith my sovereign Yahweh. They shall enter into my sanctuary, and they shall come near to my table to minister unto me, and they shall keep my charge. And it shall come to pass that when they enter into the
James, we just lost you there.
the gates. I'm here.
Okay, you're back.
Sorry.
Yeah.
When they enter into the gates of the inner court, they shall be clothed with linen garments. No wool shall come upon them while they minister in the gates in the inner court. But basically, this is going on. It goes on to talk about the Zadok priesthood and how that they kept the charge, and they kept basically when the rest of Israel went astray, even the Levites, they were the ones that stayed and basically manned the sanctuary. And there was a covenant made with the Zadoks. Well, it was actually made with Pinchas, where Yahweh made a covenant with Pinchas in Numbers 25, 1 through 13, where basically Pinchas, they were committing adultery, and it was basically an abomination in front of Yahweh, where some sexual act, and Pinchas basically put a javelin or a spear through them as they were basically committing this adulterous act. And Yahweh made a promise to Pinchas and to his descendants after him, and that they would be an everlasting priesthood, a covenant of peace, in which the one true God would forever show his favor upon the family line. We see that the Zadoks, they actually come from that family lineage of Pinchas. Let's see here. In 1 Samuel 2, 12, 34, and 35, Eli the priest had two corrupt sons who did not know Yahweh, and Elohim replaced them with faithful priests after his own heart and mind, and those who would walk before his who would be anointed forever. In 2 Samuel 15, 24 through 36, and 1 Kings 2, Solomon removed Abiathar from being priest to Yahweh in the fulfillment of Yahweh's word concerning the house of Eli. It goes on, but basically the Zadoks were the ones who basically, the name Zadok means righteousness. The name Pinchas means mouth of brass. Brass is something that basically, let's see what I had it written down here. Brass was something that basically kept away. Sorry. Yeah, basically kept away disease. But the Levites, the difference between the Levites and the Zadoks, where the Levites were born into the priesthood, the Zadoks chose it. They chose their heart. Basically, they wanted to obey Yahweh, and that was the difference. But the Zadoks also, we get the Melchizedek priesthood from them, and that'll be the new priesthood that comes through Yeshua, which was before the Levitical priesthood. I truly believe it. And in Exodus 19:5-6, Yahweh wanted to make the nation of Israel a kingdom of kings and priests. All those who would follow him would be kings and priests. But the problem was that they disobeyed him and worshiped the golden calf, broke the covenant right away. Therefore, the Levitical priesthood was put into effect. That was not his original plan. And that's why we got in 1 Peter, it talks about, let me see if I've got it here. 1 Peter says, basically, 1 Peter says that we're a chosen generation. We again have been, we're a royal priesthood, and we again have been basically brought back to that original promise. And that's what the whole thing is about. The name Zadok means righteousness, and they were the ones who kept the sanctuary. And I think it pertains to us today, because we should be keeping the sanctuary and should be keeping the things holy today, while Yahweh is finishing his.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, James. You know, I was just thinking about this as you were talking about that. Although there's no blood connection between Joseph, Yeshua's earthly father, and Yeshua, there is the fact that in the lineage of Joseph is the lineage of Zadok. And there was a connection there, which I thought was a very interesting piece from the things that you're talking about. That same concept, that same which really ties in why Yeshua is falling in the order of Melchizedek, and sets up a priesthood. Though he was not a Levite, he's coming from the tribe of Judah, he can actually be our high priest and set us up that way. So, Joe, what are your thoughts about this?
I have one question here. You're sitting there because I didn't get to study this part, but anyway, the part where his sons, Elisha sons are killed off, and then he has other priests. Well, we see here you're sitting there saying, look at Joseph, the father of Yeshua. Look at him and Samuel. Samuel was not his son either. That's correct, right?
Samuel was not Eli's son. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so we have that connection as well in the scriptures. So there's that. And then what I liked, JR, was you were talking about how we have to keep the sanctuary clean. Well, what is the sanctuary today? The sanctuary is us. Our bodies is the living tabernacle. We're a walking, talking tabernacle, and we're to keep this holy. We're to keep this pure. How do we do that? Well, one, we read his word, I call them love letters, and we learn from it. Two, we obey it and try not to live according to the world, because it says in his word to be what? To be set apart. So there's these things right there in his word. It shows us how to be pure, clean sanctuaries, and righteous sanctuaries. Because remember, Abraham was a righteous man, but he did mess up, and we need to remember that. And we come back to him, but he did not follow through with everything that he did. He messed up. He came back to the Father, said, "Father, I messed up. Forgive me," and he went on. Don't just, when you mess up, think, oh, well, God doesn't love me and he doesn't want me, and I'm going to go in a corner and just sit there and think that I'm unwanted. No, go ask for forgiveness. He will take care of it. But don't do it blatantly either. That's one thing, because doing it blatantly and you knowing that you are sinning, that's blasphemy.
Right. I'm thinking about this while you're talking, and what James had said. I'm thinking about the Qumran community. The Qumran community was the Zadok priesthood that when the Hasmoneans came in and the temple was corrupted during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, that the Zadok priesthood took the scrolls from the temple and they went down to the Qumran area. And of course, that's where we found all of these different parchments and stuff, and which was a great discovery back in the late 40s, like 1947, 1948. And the Qumran community is the community that we see where Yochanan, the immerser, John the Baptist, came out of. that he was the voice crying out in the wilderness. This was a community that people said, yeah, those are the really religious types, but they were actually the remnant that was trying to preserve the truth and preserve that which was right, and to walk in that priesthood, that came out of the same zeal that, James, you were talking about from Pincus. That zeal that said the temple is being, there's an abomination in the temple, and that's where he went and pierced through that javelin through the prince of, was it Simeon? Was he from Simeon? I think he was. But anyway, pierced through the two, and to cleanse the temple. And God said that you'll be a priest. You will now be a priest forever. So that's the lineage. That's the Zadok priesthood. That's where we see so much coming out of. And then that's really, if we're going to be in the Melchizedek priesthood, the king of righteousness, Zadok, is where we get Zadik, and that's where we get righteousness from. That is the zeal that we're supposed to carry. That zeal for the temple. This temple, like you're talking about, Joe, and the body of Messiah, which is also a representation of the temple, when all of us join together as one, as a chad, as a one people, one body. And James, you were talking about it earlier. We're so divided. And if we'd unite under the Moedim, under the Shabbats, the weekly Shabbats, the feast days, which are also Shabbats, the new moon festivals, those things that are the pathways of righteousness, we'd get on the same path. Even if we're on a different calendar, we're still within a few days of each other. We're still walking in that cycle of things. So anyway, just some thoughts, some really, really good points. James, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah. One thing that I was doing a little studying on was that Zadok was the patrilineal descendant of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. The lineage of Zadok is presented in the genealogy of Ezra, the 9th generation, and direct patrilineal descent of Pinchas, the son of Eleazar. One thing we've got here, though, is that as the Dead Sea Scrolls indicate, the Zadokites basically, where was that? Okay, here it goes. The eternal high priest, if Yeshua was to be qualified for the final sacrifice of the Passover lamb, he would have to be from this lineage. We know that basically the same blood lineage that flowed through the veins of John the Baptist also flowed through the veins of Yeshua HaMashiach. To kind of go over this, the high priest to King David, King Solomon, was Zadok. The first high priest to the temple of Solomon was Zadok. The last high priest to serve the temple of Solomon was Jehozadak. The first high priest to the temple of Herod was from the house of Zadok. The high priest at the time of Yeshua was born was Yeshua ben Seir, or Yeshua V, from the house of Zadok. The eternal high priest, our eternal high priest, Yeshua HaMashiach, is from the house of Zadok. And we know this basically, John the Baptist, or Yochanan the Immerser, his father was the high priest. That's where he found out that he was going to have a child, and he was made mute. Yeshua was from the same lineage and was part of the Zedek priesthood.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. There's so much that just following that lineage out just tells us so much. And it was Zadok who replaced, I think it was was it Abiathar or Abihar or something like that, that was the priest at the time of David. And when David inquired of the priest could not give him an answer. So David changed the priesthood. He made the other person high priest, Zadok, which was the son of lineage of Pincus, and because he had the word of the Lord for David, which ultimately helped David through that time of a civil unrest between his family taking over trying to take over the kingship. So very, very interesting. More things to dig out. Well, Joe, James, thank you so much for contributing today and being with me today on Let Us Reason Together. Also, thank you, Sandi, who's stepped away, but she's within my voice range and she can hear me. And thank you for being part of Let Us Reason Together. So if y'all been listening and you like the show, give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you think. We appreciate your comments there in the chat room today. It's been active and we appreciate that as well. Spread us on your social media. Get the word out about this Torah-based program. And we certainly want to let people know that the word is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, dividing asunder bone and marrow and soul and spirit. And that's what we want to do here, taking these current events and dividing those things and giving us perspective in the day and the world that we're living in through the Torah portion. Well, with that said, I want to say thank you. Join us next time, y'all willing. We'll be back on Monday. And stay tuned with other great shows here on the Lamb Network. And by the way, you can catch every live show at MessianicLambRadio.com. Don't have the chat room up there, but if you're one that just simply wants to listen throughout the day, you can catch our live shows there at MessianicLambRadio.com. So with that said, I'll have to say shalom. And until next time, oh, I just said shalom. All right. So till next time, shalom. Bye.